An extensive report by The Intercept highlights that the FBI used informants, even detectives, let's put her up, in order to infiltrate organizations who believed in Black lives. Yes, we have talked about this before. We have actually interviewed victims of this scheme that took place under the Trump administration. Let me remind you of what was said back then. Here it is.
For the last couple of years, although there have been rumors about agent provocateurs and infiltrators in the racial justice movement, we've not had any concrete information on what happened. And what these recordings show is the first behind the scenes look at what the FBI was doing during the summer of 2020. And what they were doing in Denver was that they paid a violent felon tens of thousands of dollars to infiltrate the racial justice movement and become a leader. And then once he was in a leadership position, he encouraged people to commit violence. A number of the demonstrations that turned violent have his fingerprints all over them. And he also tried to specifically entrap racial justice activists like Zeb in crimes that they would never have committed were it not for the FBI engineering the entire thing. And one last point I want to make is that what's particularly troubling about this case is that a lot of the tactics that the informant uses are the same tactics that we saw FBI informants use in the 1960s against Black political groups during COINTELPRO, specifically the use of so-called snitch jacketing, which is labeling real activists and real leaders as informants in order to sow chaos and sow confusion, and then take advantage of the fact that you have then sowed chaos among the groups. And it's a particularly subverting effect that happened in the 60s, and we saw the same thing happen in Denver in 2020.
Let's put the picture up of the new face they have presented by way of The Intercept as it relates to this FBI undercover egregious operation. Now, let me remind you, we have learned here on Indisputable that one of the tactics utilized by their informants is to not only become a leader within the movement, but to then tell those who are not willing to do illegal action, if you don't, you must be a snitch. And I'm going to have to tell people that you are a snitch if you don't do this thing that I'm telling you to do. That is called entrapment. That means there is no crime except for the fact that the federal government was involved. All right, let's keep the picture up. In an extensive report by The Intercept, it shows that the FBI used an undercover cop with pink hair, masquerading as a sex worker, to infiltrate progressive activist groups in Colorado Springs, Colorado. April Rogers is a detective with the Colorado Springs Police Department, according to The Intercept. In the summer of 2020, the FBI enlisted her services to infiltrate racial justice groups in order to spound them. She used the name Chelsea Curti and said she was a sex worker. John Christensen is one of the co-founders of the Chinook Center, a progressive community in Colorado Springs, that Rogers walked into claiming that she wanted to volunteer. Christensen said that Rogers implied that she was, in fact, a sex worker. She implied over the course of getting to know her that she was a sex worker, said Christensen. She dressed in a way that was sort of noticeable, added his wife, Samantha Christensen. Rogers claimed to have a file cabinet that she could donate to the center. And I was like, yeah, sure. We need all kinds of stuff, said John. This giant filing cabinet, in retrospect, after the fact, we're like, right, that looks like a filing cabinet that would be in a police station. There's more. The outlet claims that Rogers was tapped to act as Chelsea during the FBI's investigation in Denver the same year, where a paid FBI informant named Mickey Weindecker, we covered this, became a prominent activist in the racial justice organizing scene there. Weindecker encouraged activists to become violent and gave the FBI informant about an activist who frequented protests in Denver and Colorado Springs. The information provided prompted the Colorado Springs operation. and Rogers tried to entrap at least 2 young men into gun running using tactics employed by Weindecker. Weindecker allegedly tried to get 2 activists to commit violent crimes, including assassinating the Colorado Attorney General. We talked about that on the show. Rogers reportedly began inviting activists back to her apartment with the implication of a possible sexual encounter. One of the men, who wishes to remain anonymous, was lured to her apartment and noted that 2 men were waiting there when he arrived. And there's 2 guys sitting there with her, he said, adding that Rogers asked him to find her an illegal gun. I'm not going to sell one to you illegally, he replied before leaving the apartment. Rogers spent a full year infiltrating the community and also tried to entrap activist Gabriel Palchik, who was also revealed that when he went to the undercover detective's apartment, 2 men were there as well and said their names were Mike and Omar. Mike was missing his left leg from the knee down. Omar was kind of a Middle Eastern looking guy with a big beard. Both had tattoos. Both were very buff. So Gabriel said the 2 men said they were truckers who sold illegal weapons. The men told Gabriel that they could get guns, including AK-47s. They also offered to get him grenades and explosive and asked him if he wanted to buy anything. A curious Gabriel met the 2 men several more times because they were generous and often bought drinks, cigars, and dinner. Before long, he was presented with an AK-47 by the men. I never saw any grenades or TNT or any of that other stuff they were talking about, he said. There were a few times where they were obviously pumping drinks into me, he added. Yeah, do you want another double shot of the 16-year scotch? Gabriel said he eventually told Mike and Omar that he wasn't interested in any weapons, noting that he stopped returning their phone calls and text messages. Democratic Senator Ron Wyden of Oregon told the outlet that the FBI abused its authority by trying to entrap activists. What do we have here? We now have more individuals saying the exact same thing as the initial interview we had right here on Indisputable. It was right here where an activist said this happened to him. This is the disguise they used, and this is the method. Disguise is different, method is the same. The activist who was on the program said this was a male who infiltrated the ranks. This is a female infiltrating the ranks. Here's the irony of it. One was a convicted felon. This one is a working detective. They were literally using everybody from A to Z. For what? For what? What did they bust? What plot did they uncover? What crimes did they stop? The idea of an undercover operation is to find existing criminals, not create them. All right, sharing thoughts here.
Once again, indisputable, Dr. Ritchie, yourself out in front. I didn't doubt it for a moment when you first tackled this one. So the FBI is trying to discredit a movement using an informant in a bad pink lace front. It's ridiculous. And it reminds me of decades ago, Dr. Ritchie, when they tried to discredit another movement and the man is the face of it. And now there's an MLK Boulevard in every city in America.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. This story will develop. There are more instances, and we will bring them to you as they come.